What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Hello, brave souls. Tonight's first story is called Vampire Myths, written by Lore Criticizer on r/shortscarystories. So you're a vampire? That's right. The stranger took a shaky sip of his cup, which was filled with heated blood. Thanks again for letting me in. No worries. You looked really hurt. Although, if you're a vampire, how did you just fall into my house when I opened the door? Like, don't I have to verbally tell you to come in? There are many myths. His pale complexion was rapidly gaining color, and some of the scratches on his face were closing as he took more sips of the blood. We don't need to ask to enter houses. It's just that for a period, all vampires were taught to be very polite, to try to make humans less scared of us. Oh, well, it succeeded, I guess. You don't seem very scary. Thanks. More, please. He held out his cup, and I refilled it from my teapot, which held blood packets which he had asked me to reheat. But you guys can turn into animals, right? Animals? He barked out a laugh. We mind control animals to act as distractions. We can't actually transform into them. We can fly, though. He hovered a foot off the sofa to prove his point, then collapsed back on with a wheeze, clutching at his stomach wounds, which even after half a liter of blood had yet to heal, merely scab. So what did this to you? I thought you guys could heal from anything that wasn't a wooden stake. Again, another myth. We can die from taking too much damage. Otherwise, we wouldn't have lost so many in World War II. And that wooden stake thing is complete BS. Medieval kings just couldn't admit they had no way of beating us mano a mano. Wait, so it's all myths? Like everything we know is wrong? No. There are beings that do need to be invited into houses. It's just that humans barely ever encounter them, so you guys don't know what they are. Oh, like what? Turning around, I dropped the teapot. Something was standing at the doorway. It was huge, 7 feet tall at least. Fangs ripped out the sides of his mouth, and it twitched maniacally, somewhat akin to a seizure victim. Its arms were bone thin, but one look and I knew it was strong enough to tear my house down to its roots if it wanted to. Its deep, soulless eyes were locked right on the man on my couch. It was clear from their intelligence, from their hate, that it wanted nothing more than to kill. That would be our predators. Our next story is called I Was Visited by a Vampire Every Night Between the Ages of 8 and 12. Written by Hack Shuck from r/shortscarystories. I don't know what you think about vampires, but I bet it's mostly bullshit. My vampire was small, strangely ageless, and wore simple things like t-shirts and slacks. Their gender was unclear to me, but it somehow seemed to veer towards female, so I'll refer to her as she. She made no sound at all, except for when she spoke, which was seldom. She'd pass straight through my wall as if it weren't there. She glided gracefully, like a kite that's escaped. Before starting to feed, she'd swirl around about 4 or 5 times, like a dog before it sits. I'd be paralyzed, all the while from the neck down. I couldn't even breathe, though through some foul magic, she'd keep me alive all night. She'd drink blood from my finger, or sometimes my wrist, but never the neck. It felt a little like a nettle sting. Then she'd sit on the end of my bed for the longest time, like a gargoyle in the dark. Then she'd feed again. Then she'd leave until the next night. Most boys would scream the house down, but not me. I'd learned from a very young age that my mama never came running when I cried. My mama never came running at all. She hated me, always had. Blamed me for driving my daddy away. I did tell Mom about my vampire, just once. And you know what she said? Good. Then she turned back to the TV and swigged some more whiskey mixed with Vicodin. Soon, I became less afraid of my vampire. I guess it sort of became normal. She only took a little blood each night, which made me even paler and weaker than I'd been previously, and I was always sickly from malnutrition. But no one noticed any change in me. No one really noticed me at all. She must have taken a shine to me, for about 6 months in. She said that as a special favor, since my blood tasted the very best she'd ever drank, I could ask her one question every year on my birthday. She told me that vampires know everything and always tell the truth. So I racked my young brains, and when my 9th birthday arrived, I asked her why she'd chosen me. Because you're the sort of person who is totally alone, she answered. Nobody will ever help you when you speak of me. On my 10th birthday, I asked her if she'd stop visiting me. Hopefully, she answered. On my 11th, I asked her name. A waste of a question, I guess, but I was dying to know. I never had one, she answered. On my 12th birthday, I lay dying. I'd swapped my Tic Tacs for my mama's Vicodin. My words were slurred when the vampire arrived. Is there an afterlife? I asked. For your mama, maybe, but not for us. And she showed me, in a mirror, my first set of fangs. I'd never seen my own smile before. Our last story tonight is called Let's Talk About Vampires by Urban Myth on r/shortscarystories. It's a silly monster, I know. I doubt you'd take this seriously. Why should you? All bad European accents and plastic bats. The idea of a vampire attack is absurd. Almost too pop culture to take seriously. Like telling you to look out for Freddy Krueger or something. But hear me out. Have you ever looked up the history of vampire myths? Originally, you had literal monsters. Your Lamia and your Strix. Inhuman, winged, metallic demons able to pick off lone Bronze Age travelers between city-states. Later, they were human but closer to zombies, feral, blood-drinking undead monsters. Mindless, savage. You'd see one coming easily, but if you lived in a medieval town, you'd be overwhelmed. Later on, you have the more classic vampires. They don't cast shadows or come out during the day. You'd notice, sure, but not quickly. In a larger city of the 1700s, you'd be tricked just long enough. Now, you ask people who believe in vampires, and they'll tell you you have a psychic vampire. They look like anyone else, feed unnoticeably. The tells being forceful personalities or intense stares, or any other number of mundane traits. In a world of phone cameras and CCTV, they're the only predator able to hide. Sure, maybe this is just the story is getting more sophisticated, or trying to adapt to a more closely watched world with less room for monsters in the shadows. Probably is. But humor me, and let me put out an alternate theory. Imagine a creature that reproduces every 3 days and feeds on the most dangerous animals on Earth. Imagine how quickly it would evolve, with that level of selection pressure. Every time society changes, it would change too, faster than any natural creature could. Adaptations that would take millions of years for a mundane animal might take mere millennia. And how do you survive hunting the most dangerous animal on Earth? You learn to hide. From inhuman to humanoid to shadowless to simply weird. As the humans get more powerful, you get better at getting in close and getting away. And the world is still changing. So yes, vampires are absurd, opera house gothic caricatures from obsolete black and white movies and teenage girls' romance novels. You might as well believe in werewolves and goblins. It's absurd. This story is absurd. You should show your friends so they can laugh about it. And if someone laughs a little too hard or is a bit too overzealous in poking holes, maybe keep notes. Anything unusual, anything that sets them aside from anyone else. Write down anything you can think is worth keeping an eye out for. Tell other people to watch out for it too. After all, the world is still changing. And soon, the vampire might have no tails left at all. Well, I wanted to thank you guys for listening. I know this was a little bit shorter this week, but I hope you still enjoyed it. Come back next week for some more vampire, werewolf, zombie stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.